And most of all, frightful. So pop your popcorn, dim the lights, and prepare for another Fright Night Radio.
There were some odd things about Jim Rustenholtz, but I never gave it much thought until he came out of the closet. A couple times, Rusty Boltz and I slammed into each other on the basketball court, and it was like getting hit with a lamppost. Nobody ever saw him eat, since he spent most lunch periods playing ping pong. Then there was that time in earth science when the electromagnet pointed straight at him, like an accusing finger. "I've got a metal plate, okay?" he said. He had an offhand way of doing things, and the way he came out was no different. The usual gang was gathered outside the senior parking lot. Rusty Boltz, John, Rashmi, and me. It was a Friday, so we were trying to decide what to do over the weekend. John, Rashmi, and I all threw out ideas, but nothing really caught fire. No good movies were playing, the weather was too crappy for biking, and we were sick of hanging out in coffee shops. Then, all eyes turned toward Rusty Boltz, because he was the only one who hadn't made a suggestion. "Well," he said, "I don't think you know this, but I'm a robot. If you want, you can come over to my place, check out the workshop where I was built." I think he's serious.
What the hell? We don't have anything else to do.
We had all been to the Rustenholtz house many times because his old man loved company. Big Bob was a big man with a big personality and a big house. He had originally planned to fill the place with kids, but that didn't work out so well. This was the first time Rusty Boltz had taken us to the workshop where he had been designed, built, and tested. The room to which he periodically returned for maintenance and occasionally repairs. The workshop was hidden away in the basement, and we never would have found the secret door without Rusty showing us. He let us in, and we took a collective gasp. Metal spider legs extended from the walls, floor, and ceiling. They seemed not just alive, but very much aware as they grappled for us like fingers. John mouthed the words,
What the fuck?
We all hugged one wall and eyed the door, as Rusty calmly explained how these monstrous things would open him up along a seam so as to inspect and calibrate his inner workings. We all gaped at him, wide-eyed and slack-jawed. "No, you can't see my seam, if that's what you're wondering." Actually, what I was wondering is how in the hell I had slipped into this nightmarish twilight zone, and what would happen if those spider legs got hold of us. A million questions swirled through my mind, but I was too shocked to utter a word. John and Rashmi looked to be just as stunned. "I can show you the process, if you want." One of the metal legs brushed against Rashmi. She screamed and latched onto me. "Don't worry, the manipulators are harmless. They're just trying to get to know you." "I don't want them to know me." John said,
I've seen enough. Can we go now?
"Does it hurt when those horrible things open you up?" "Nah, there's really nothing to it. I'd be happy to show you, although I'd have to take my clothes off first. Would that bother you, Rashmi?" Rusty and Rashmi always had a bit of a special relationship. They constantly flirted with each other, and yet never dated, probably because they didn't want to ruin the good thing the four of us had.
I'm out of here,
said John, sliding along the wall and out the door. He made his getaway, so now it was just Rusty, Rashmi, and me trapped in there with the manipulators. "I wouldn't mind that," Rashmi said. "You taking your clothes off? You sure it doesn't hurt?" "Not at all." He stripped down without a trace of modesty, taking the time to fold his clothes and place them on a small shelf in one corner. Then he stepped into the midst of all those manipulators, And sure enough, they found an invisible seam, unzipped it, and peeled off his skin like a wetsuit, exposing a steel endoskeleton intertwined with wires and fiber optic cables. This grotesque mockery of our friend did a goofy little dance for us while servo motors whirred and whined. Rashmi gasped and buried her face in my shoulder. Part of me wanted to bolt from the room, but another part was riveted. The manipulators went to work on Rusty's endoskeleton with lightning speed. A couple times they used lasers, but that was also too fast to track. The only sound was a light swishing, like a chef sharpening knives. Rashmi eventually tore herself from my shoulder to watch. When Rusty opened his mouth to speak, a metallic talk sound emanated from somewhere within. It reminded me of a raven.
So anyway,
He said, as if nothing were amiss.
what's new with you two?
The four of us were tight through high school, but after graduation we went our separate ways and I slowly lost track of the old gang. I moved out of the Chicago suburbs to travel and go to college, but returned after a few years. Then Rashmi looked me up and we got together at Café Descartes, our old hangout. Paintings of the great philosophers still adorned the walls. After ordering drinks at the counter, I headed for our old table.
Not there. Nietzsche scares me. Let's sit over here by Kierkegaard.
We sat by Kierkegaard and made small talk. It was wonderful seeing her again. I asked if she kept in touch with the others.
You might say that. I married Rusty Bolts.
I almost choked on my Irish cream. Truth be told, Rusty's coming out hadn't changed things much. Learning that he was a robot threw us for a loop, but then we got used to the idea and everything went back to business as usual. Robot or no, Rusty Bolts was just another one of the guys, so why shouldn't he get married like anybody else? And as far as jealousy went, there was none. My love for Rashmi had always been more brotherly than romantic.
Did I upset you?
No. You surprised me.
You and Rusty, huh?
Me and Rusty. I'm happy for you.
But you have questions.
I do, but don't want to ask.
You're wondering how we can be together, a human and a robot.
As I said, I didn't want to ask.
He's a robot, but he's also anatomically correct. Of course you knew that. You've seen him naked.
Oh, Rashmi.
Plus, he stimulates me, Kevin.
That's nice.
No, I mean electrically. He electrically stimulates my pleasure centers while we're...
Okay.
Oh, poor Kevin. Always such a prude.
I know.
But really, it's quite extraordinary. He has to be careful about how much juice he runs through me. Then again, it wouldn't be such a bad way to go.
Oh, that's enough. Too much information. Again, she laughed. But I'm glad you're happy. And I'm sure Rusty must be happy. Rashmi's smile faded at that, and she sipped her chai latte for a long time before finally saying what was really on her mind.
That's just it. I don't know if he's happy. He acts happy and sounds cheerful. You know how he is.
Yeah, a really upbeat guy.
He always has friends around, just like Big Bob. He still likes to go out all the time, meet more people, make new friends. I like to go out, but not as much as he does. Sometimes it's nice to just stay at home and relax. Funny, isn't it?
What's that?
The robot is the social one, while the human is the stick in the mud. You must know how it is. As you get older, you just naturally start to appreciate the occasional quiet evening.
Absolutely.
But Rusty hasn't slowed down one bit. Sometimes he drags me along, and other times I just stay home and turn into my mother. Isn't that what they say? We all turn into our parents?
That's what they say. It sounds like Rusty is turning into his old man. One of those people persons who just loves everybody.
Except I don't think he does.
What do you mean?
I always assumed he had the robotic equivalent of human feelings, the old ghost in the machine. He could laugh and joke with the best of us, yet he also had a serious side. But now, I don't know. I'm sure he must love you, Rashmi. How can you know that? Just because he can pass a Turing test doesn't mean he has genuine emotions. How do I know he doesn't just follow his programming?
We all follow our programming, even though our friend Kierkegaard here would probably disagree.
This is different. I don't think he loves me, or has any feelings whatsoever about me, or about anybody else for that matter. He...
What? She didn't say anything at all. What happened? What changed? Surely you must have felt he loved you before you married him. What changed, Rashmi? She pulled a hunk of metal from her purse and set it on the table between us. Is that what I think it is?
It is.
Rusty had given us the surprise of our lives that day in the workshop when he dramatically stripped down to his endoskeleton. But then the shock wore off and the questions came. The big question was, how? Rusty's dad was a great guy, but he was no scientist. There was no way Big Bob could build himself a robot son. I asked Rusty, and all he said was, "Come to one of my old man's shindigs." He wouldn't say anything more, so I went to the next Rustenholtz barbecue. Guests filled the house, deck, and yard to overflowing, and every third person I met was some sort of scientist or computer genius. Big Bob seemed to be everywhere at once, shaking hands and hugging friends and kissing cheeks. Yeah, Dad's a real people person. Isn't that right, Dad? Big Bob appeared out of the crowd as if by magic and said, "What can I say? The only thing I was ever good at is making friends. Fortunately, that's all a man needs in this old world." Bob had always made friends everywhere he went. In his many travels, he befriended computer programmers, robotic engineers, theoretical physicists, and assorted other techno-geeks. When he was a young man, he went into sales, earned good money, married a pretty lady named Carol, and bought a big house. A house big enough for the family he had long dreamt of. He didn't know that Carol was already in the first stages of leukemia. Within 2 years, he had lost her, and found himself wandering around a house that was suddenly far too big and far too empty. It didn't stay that way, though. After the funeral, the house filled with mourners and well-wishers. Most of them left after a few hours, but the most brilliant of Bob's friends stayed behind. They were there for him in his darkest hour, and they had a plan. They couldn't bring Carol back to life, but they could build Big Bob a son. Rusty Bolts had been a labor of love. His robotic quirks aside, Rusty had to be the most normal one of our group. He was a mediocre athlete, strong but ever so slightly clumsy, and an average student, but good at math. He was popular, but never ran for student office. He had a good sense of humor, but was never the class clown. He was neither a geek nor a jock. He even had a dog, a big black Labrador named Brutus. And what could be more normal than that? Only rarely was I reminded of what he was. Like the time I found him slumped in a corner of the chemistry lab between classes. I asked if he was okay. I'm run down. He made that strange, metallic talk sound, and it echoed through the empty room. It was only after his coming out that I noticed his occasional talk. Something is wrong with my power core. Your power core? My battery. My battery is drained, you scientifically illiterate flesh bag. He was joking. But there was nothing funny about what was happening. His body was dead still, and when he spoke, even his mouth barely moved. What can I do? It's embarrassing, so first close the door. Fortunately, the lab wasn't in use. I closed the door. Now, get me over to that outlet. He was dead weight and incredibly heavy, but I managed. Once by the outlet, he raised his shirt and opened a panel in his gut, unzipping another hidden seam. I couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to have seams and compartments throughout my body.
I'm almost out of power.
His voice was an uncanny cross between human and computer.
Reach in, pull out the cord, plug me in. Plug me into the wall, like you would a vacuum cleaner.
As far as I knew, Rusty's secret didn't extend beyond myself, John, and Rashmi. What would happen if somebody stepped into the lab and caught me reaching inside his body? I didn't have much choice, though. Rusty was very close to going offline. I reached in, felt around, found his cord, and pulled. Again, he spoke in that eerie voice.
In case this happens to erase my memory, I want you to know.
His eyes shut, and his face went slack. My heart dropped in my chest, and I wanted to shake him, shout at him, but that would do no good. Instead, I plugged the cord into the outlet. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then something inside Rusty began to hum. His eyes opened, and he found me.
Hello,
He said,
my name is Jim Rustenholtz. What's your name?
"Oh, fuck."
It is a pleasure to meet you, oh fuck.
I backstepped and tripped over my own feet, falling against the lab table. Vials and beakers crashed to the floor. Then Rusty sat there and laughed, loud and long.
I got you, Kevin! Oh, I got you good.
Now, sitting in Café Descartes years later, memories of the old days came flooding back. I picked up the hunk of metal Rashmi had put on the table.
It's his backup memory core. He made it, or downloaded it, or whatever, in case anything ever happened to him. Essentially, it's a copy of his brain.
Her hands shook as she pulled her laptop from its bag and placed it on the table. She plugged the memory core into the computer. After a few seconds, a robot icon appeared on the screen. She clicked on it, and a dialog box opened. She typed,
Hello, Rusty.
The response was immediate.
Hello, Father.
I looked at the screen, looked at Rashmi. Father?
He's in diagnostic mode. He thinks he's talking with Big Bob.
Of course. Good old Big Bob.
I never set out to pry into Rusty's mind, but something in me was curious. It was like finding his diary, except even more intimate. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't resist. I just wanted to see if there was anything he wasn't telling me.
You thought he was keeping secrets?
Nothing deep and dark, but what about little things? Like maybe there were things I did that annoyed him. I could stop doing them. Or maybe there are things he really likes that I don't do. I could start doing those things. Really, that's all it was. That's all I was looking for.
I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to think of something to say.
I'm a damn liar. The truth is, I don't know why I pried. It was wrong of me.
The words psychic rape flashed through my mind, but I kept quiet.
This,
She tapped the memory core.
this is sacred space. His soul, for lack of a better word, all his memories, his thoughts, his feelings, if he has any feelings.
What did you find, Rashmi?
Look,
She typed.
how are you feeling today, Rusty?
Again, the reply was immediate.
The appropriate response to that inquiry will vary depending upon circumstances and the person posing the question. This unit has developed a sophisticated algorithm to determine the optimal gestures, facial expressions, tonality, and sequence of words for a variety of circumstances, all with the aim of fulfilling your central directives, Father.
What the hell is that supposed to mean? She typed.
What are those central directives?
The words flashed onto the screen.
First, to make friends, for friends are a blessing and will be by your side during your darkest hour. Second, to get married, for every man must cleave unto a wife. And third, to act normal and live a robust life.
My God. When I hugged her goodbye later, she cried and made me promise to keep in touch. Then she hauled the memory core out of her bag and shoved it into my hand.
Take this damn thing. I don't want it around. It creeps me out. See what you can get from it.
I awoke from a dead sleep with a memory from those long ago days. It was a bright spring day. Big Bob was away on business, John was sick, and Rashmi was out on a date. I went over to Rusty's house to see if he wanted to do something, just the two of us. The living room curtain was open a crack. I looked inside and saw Rusty. I was about to wave, but stopped. He was sitting in a chair, staring at a wall, dead still. He wasn't slumped over like that time his power core had drained in the chemistry lab. He was simply doing nothing. Okay, that wasn't all that weird. Everybody daydreams from time to time. But when Brutus came over a moment later and pushed his nose against his leg, Rusty still just sat there, as if catatonic. Brutus pawed him. No response. After some time, the dog gave up and went away. I rang the bell. When Rusty answered, I asked if everything was okay.
Yeah, fine, he said. I was just roughhousing with Brutus. Oh, look at him. I think I finally wore him out.
By itself, that was nothing. But then, other memories trickled in. Little things, incidents I had thought nothing of at the time, or dismissed and went on with my life. One evening, Rashmi and I came over to see Rusty. Big Bob answered the door, and beer bottles were strewn everywhere. Bob was clearly hammered and in a foul mood. He tried putting on a show of being his usual good-natured self, but wasn't fooling anyone. Rashmi asked,
Is Rusty about?
Big Bob looked at us with a coldness I had never seen from him before, and growled, Yeah, in its room. Its room. The memories kept coming. Times I had watched Rusty when he thought nobody was looking, and all trace of clumsiness was gone. Passing moments when his face was totally blank, like he was still calculating the best set of expressions to utilize. That metallic talk sound he made when processing information. Innocuous at the time, but suddenly creepy in retrospect. Little things, so insignificant I never gave them a second thought, but taken together, they added up. And now, Rashmi was married to him. I gave up trying to sleep and went to my desk where I had stashed the memory core. I plugged the core into my computer. Once the program loaded, I typed, Hello, Rusty. I clicked on the sound activation option, and after a few seconds, a voice from the past crackled through my computer speakers.
Hello, Father.
I tried to imagine what it would be like if somebody had downloaded my brain into a little hunk of metal. Would I be up for scintillating conversation? Probably not. I typed, What are your central directives, Rusty?
The central directives, decided upon by you, Father, are as follows. First, to make friends, for friends are a blessing, and will be by your side during your darkest hour. Second, to get married, for every man must cleave unto a wife. And third, to act normal and live a robust life.
How do you achieve these directives, Rusty?
This unit has developed a comprehensive algorithm to determine optimal
Rusty,
behavior
or
for a
whatever it
variety of
was, went on to
circumstances.
explain
By
in
following this
detail the
algorithm,
various
this
ways
unit has
in
been
which
able
he
to
utilized
achieve
words,
otherwise
gestures, and
non-quantifiable
body
goals,
language to
such as
forge
advancing
human
social
bonds.
standing. As these interim
I was
goals are
about to
met,
cut him off
this
when
unit has
something caught
continued
my
to
ear.
seek out further social engagements that will facilitate the acquisition of friends.
What
These
kind of social engagements, Rusty? Football games?
football games yielded adequate results in the past, but parameters have changed, and this unit has adapted algorithms to accommodate. Participation in the game of golf and the attendance of cocktail parties now yield more satisfactory results under these new parameters.
It was Rusty's voice, but I had never heard him speak like this. Does Rashmi like these parties? 4 long seconds passed. What was Rusty Boltz thinking in there? Finally,
The spousal unit Rashmi's attendance at said events has declined to 37%. This decline has reduced the bonding effectiveness of this unit. Existing parameters have been insufficient in solving the problem. New tactics are being explored.
what new tactics, Rusty?
This unit has observed the bonding effectiveness of the social engagement of funerals due to the human emotions of grief and sympathy. This unit is continually adapting new techniques to fulfill the central directives.
Ice ran through my body. They will be by your side during your darkest hour. After some seconds, Rusty's voice asked,
Are you proud of me, Father?
It was 4:37 in the morning, but I didn't hesitate to grab my phone and punch in Rashmi's cell number. I couldn't help but think about the wording of Rusty's central directive, to get married, not to get married and stay married. Of course I was being paranoid. I practically grew up with Rusty. He might have been a clever automaton devoid of human emotions, but he was no killer. Rashmi would answer, and I'd apologize for waking her. The phone rang, and rang. The line opened. Rashmi? Hello? Rusty? Is that you? This is Kevin, from the old days.
Kevin? Is that really you?
It's me, Rusty. What the hell is going on?
Kevin, something awful has happened.
I tried to speak again, but my throat had closed up. My mind flashed to what Rashmi had told me about Rusty electrically stimulating her pleasure centers, and how he had to be careful about how much juice he ran through her.
Poor Rashmi. Her dear, sweetheart gave out. I loved her, you know.
No. Rusty, no.
Kevin, this is my darkest hour. I need you by my side. Will you be my friend again? Will you? Will you?
Will you?
Thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode of Fright Night Radio. If you enjoyed our story, please give us a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you enjoy a frightful new tale every Friday night. Pleasant dreams.